And what we want to talk about today, we know that so often women, all entrepreneurs, are confounded by challenges when it comes to fundraising, knowing what kind of resources they need to be accessing in order to build their businesses, and something that's really fundamental, which is networking. And who doesn't need a really good network in order to give them the support to get out there and start their business, right? We all have fear. We don't know if we should do this. It's a big decision. We need strong, positive people in our network to encourage us. Once we get out there, we need our network to help us figure out the problems and challenges that we're going to encounter along the way. And as we have a business that's a going concern, so much of business in a service type of industry is word of mouth. So we have to count on referrals, and what better referrals than people in our network who know us, who trust us, who've seen our work and can really be a testimony to it. So Gretchen, why don't we start with you? How have you been able to navigate and strategize with your network in the various phases of setting up and running Gretchen Meyer Financial?
That's a great question. How far do you want me to go back? No, just kidding. So I did get started in my practice. I had moved upstate after I graduated at Columbia, and you talked about innovation before and how that comes out of a need. And I looked around, and I had a recruiter call me and say, are you interested in financial consulting? And I really gave it some thought, and the need that I saw was financial consulting specifically for women. And because women's needs are different, we live longer, we earn less, we're more likely to need long-term care, we get less pension, less Social Security, so there's definitely a need. And I just moved upstate and I didn't know anybody, so I would go to these networking events and I'd say, look, I'm looking for friends and clients. And I was authentic in that response, but whether they became my friend or a client, it didn't matter to me. And so I started with just one client, and then she told her friends, and then they told their friends. And now I do have clients all over the United States. But also, in addition to asking for friends or clients, I had a lot of intention when I went to these networking events. And that intention was, how could I develop my centers of influence? And those are complementary to my business. So who does a financial planner need to refer to? An accountant, for example, or an estate attorney. Those are great centers of influence for me. As I build my practice, likely somebody's going to ask me if I know an accountant, and if I have an accountant or two or three in my Rolodex, then I can refer those people. So that's something that also comes to mind in my network. But one last thing I do want to share is in the networking itself, I would approach networking, and maybe somebody that I met at a networking event, and they say, hey, would you like to grab a coffee? I would always make it about them. I would say, how can I help you? What are the things that you're looking to do? And I think sometimes it takes people a little off guard because they're thinking I'm in it. I'm in this coffee chat to make it about me. But what I found to be most successful was when I asked somebody, what is it that I could do for you? And that goes a long way. And so if you ask what you can do, and then you actually follow up on it, and you make a further connection for somebody else, or you pave the way for somebody else, people are blown away, and it really, really does go a long way. So that's my experience with network.
I love the way you close that. I have the same philosophy. I usually start out by asking what I can do for the other person. And I find that you're building a relationship, and a relationship has to be based on trust and mutual benefit. So I love that about your story. And Renu, as an executive coach, I'm sure that you're on the front line of helping the women that you coach figure out how to network. So you're networking yourself, but you're probably also guiding them in networking techniques. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on this question.
Well, thank you. So I loved everything Gretchen said. So check, check, check. So I'm going to shift a little bit over, I guess, to the mind space or the psychology of networking, and I'm going to dovetail from the idea of offering to help to recognizing your worth. And the fact that even by offering your help, it means you recognize your own worth. And so, speaking about it both from my experience as an entrepreneur, but also helping other people, as you mentioned, Gretchen, I love what you had talked about, how you started, you tell one person and that one person then tells other people. My first step out when I made the switch from corporate to doing something with my own name on it. So I went from American Express, or I had Deloitte Consulting. I always had like a big name attached to my name. And then suddenly I was like, Renu Vitale Coaching. And it felt really terrifying. And suddenly the worth question, I knew I had something to offer, but it felt a little bit like the seesaw tipped of something I was so sure of. Suddenly it didn't feel so obvious to me in that moment where I was starting from scratch. And so getting out there, one of the first things I really learned was to understand, which is exactly the point of offering help. It reminds your brain, it reminds you inside you have something to offer. And I find that when I'm helping other people, who, by the way, when I'm helping executives, I'm helping C-level people or upper management. These are people who have accomplished careers, a very broad network, yet they come to me and they say, I don't know how to access my network. It's because in the moment where things aren't shining platinum, and you need help, suddenly your self-worth goes, it dips over a little bit. So
Mhm.
I would say that a very critical piece is knowing that you have something to offer, and knowing that when you're networking, even the other way where you're trying to share what you do, recognizing you're not asking for a favor, sharing yourself, first sharing yourself to offer to help, but then separately sharing the thing that you're seeking is actually sharing a valuable asset to the other person. So even if it's looking for a job, the fact is, if you offer someone, what is one of the hardest things to do in corporate America? Find good people. Offering yourself is helping the person who you're then saying, hey, do you know anybody? Or, Gretchen, offering your services, you're going to improve the outcomes of women who are seeking to improve their financial situation. So truly understanding that you're offering something of value is a really critical adjunct to knowing, the strategies of networking.
Wow, I couldn't have said it better myself. When I talk with women about working, and a lot of times I'll talk with students. Students are kind of struggling, right? They're very keen on building their network. We think about the graduate students at Columbia, for example. And one of the first questions that they'll say is, I don't know what to say. I don't have anything to offer this person. How can I sit down with this C-suite level individual who's willing to give me some of his or her time? I don't know what to say because I really haven't accomplished anything. So I really like the fact that you encourage people to reflect and think, because just being in that meeting, there's always something that you can give, some part of yourself that you can share. So I like that advice.
Great.